Hi London and Tower, it's Tuesday the 2nd of February 2021 and this is an overview of your schedule for today. You have your early morning work, which will be Rockstar Maths today, and I'll be looking at those. It's great to see some of you have a real go. Please do let me know if it is too easy or too hard for you and I can mess around and change that up. Your maths, some of you are doing more decimals or you might be doing percentages today. The literacy skills is some reading, so please go on, make sure that you are reading whatever text is on there and completing the activity. You might need to remember to press hand in. Make sure you take a break, do some exercise, walk around, have a drink of water, have a piece of fruit. Very important to keep yourself healthy. Then writing. You can keep watching this lesson to learn all about explanation text, because at the end of this week you'll be writing an explanation text which you will need to remember to upload so we can read it. Okay, don't forget to do that at the end of the week. Then have a healthy lunch, have a little bit of a break and work on electricity and circuits, which is our topic lesson. So you are going to be writing all about how a circuit works at the end of this week. So you need to make sure you're going through all of those videos from Oak Academy, clicking on the links, doing all the quizzes and joining in with any activities if there's a shared Google Doc. You are going to be writing to explain. So have a think about how a circuit works. We've used circuits before, we had them in year 5, so think about that. What is in a circuit? What does it do? How does it work? What is it for? So a circuit is a full loop which is designed to allow electrons to pass around and flow in a circuit to conduct electricity. In order for a circuit to work, it needs to be fully connected with wires. A circuit uses electricity to do things like light up light bulbs and turn on buzzers. Inside the wires is metal, which allows the electricity to be conducted, which means that the electrons can flow around in a full circuit. When you are writing to explain, not only do we include what something is, but also how it works. It's slightly different to other types of writing. Have a think about these two questions. You're going to have 3 minutes to think about them. Explain why you took up your favourite hobby, or explain how you met your best friend. Have a think about how you would explain those things. So how did you do at explaining both of those things or one of those things? And what type of language did you use? We're going to recap the basic principles of writing to explain. What do we need to do when we write to explain? Here we've got a cartoon. My throat feels like something has scratched it and my head feels like someone is hitting it with a hammer. You have a cold. Colds are caused by viruses that cannot be treated with antibiotics. The way you are feeling is normal when you have a cold. So which person is explaining? Do you think it's one person? Do you think it's another? What makes you think that? Explaining is a detailed discussion. And the purpose of writing to explain is to provide answers to questions and give reasons or help someone to understand a process. A process is a way that something happens. We can often confuse writing to explain with writing to inform. When we're writing to inform, we are just saying all about something. Often we call it a fact file. But when you're writing to explain, you don't just write information, you also need to give reasons. So in order to think about the difference, we need to think about a slightly different set of questions. When we're writing to inform, when we're telling something, we're saying what happens, when, who, and where. Those are the questions that we're answering. You have a cold. I'm telling you something. This is what a cold is. But when you're writing to explain, you should also answer why and how. So this person is explaining what a cold is and how you would feel if you had a cold. We also sometimes confuse writing to explain and writing to instruct. So if you think about instructions, it's telling someone what to do, whereas explanations are not just saying what something is or why something happens, but also how, following the whole process. So here's some examples. When you explain, you're saying what happens, how and why something happens. So this is an example. When someone writes, they may use a pen. Instructions tell you what to do. So this is instructions. Remember, they're normally numbered. Pick up the pen. So it's using instructions, use a different type of verb, bossy verb. Pick up the pen. Whereas explanation, when someone writes, they may use a pen. So there's a different sound to that. We're often writing in the third person. Explaining how usually involves describing a process, showing cause and effect. That means saying why something happens. What happens if you do something, then something else will happen. X happens, which causes Y to happen. I open the window, which causes cold air to come in, which makes the classroom colder. Explaining why involves giving causes and a reason. The classroom gets colder because we open the window in the morning. So here is an idea about things that we need to include when we write to explain. So it needs to be really clear. We usually use formal language. We also use technical and scientific vocabulary. So we're very specific about what we're talking about. If we're talking about electricity, what sort of vocabulary will you need? Here is some of the vocabulary you might be looking to use. A circuit. So the circuit is the component and the wires and what makes the electricity flow around. So it's in a circle, circuit, circle. Wire, this is a wire, and inside this is metal, which conducts electricity and allows the electrons to flow around the circuit. Okay, when you put things like bulbs in or buzzers, those are components. Attached, so making sure your circuit is connected at different points. And inside we talked about flows. The electricity flows through the circuit or flows around the circuit from component to component. When you are writing, you always have to think about who your audience is and what the purpose is. So if you were writing for the purpose of explaining, what's it for? It's to explain something. You need to think about your audience or your reader, who is reading it or who is listening to it. And that will affect the language that you use, the way that you speak or write. It will be different if you're talking to teenagers or if you're talking to people of your own age or even younger children. And that will change again depending on if you're talking to parents, for example, or even if you were explaining something to the school governors. Think about if you were explaining how lunchtime works to the school governors. You'd be speaking very differently than if it was a new child coming in and you were explaining to them how things worked in the school. Explanation texts require a logical structure. You need to think about what order you're going to provide the information. Sometimes when you're explaining, it doesn't matter what order you put things in, but for electricity, there will be some ways that are more logical than others when you're trying to explain how it works, when you're trying to explain a circuit, for example. And you should use effective connectives to help guide your reader through the explanation. So let's have a look at this. This has causal language, which talks about why things happen, the consequences of something. If this, then this. When you do this, this happens. Okay. The reason that Hannah burst into tears was that no one had remembered her birthday. When she woke up, she noticed that everything was the same as usual, brothers and sisters noisily getting ready for school. So she got up quickly to see whether there were any presents lying around. Nothing. This caused a violent eruption of emotions. Now, there's a few things in here. The explanation for why she was in tears comes in different stages. We start with the reason. So the reason was that. The reason that Hannah burst into tears was that no one had remembered her birthday. When she woke up, so this is telling us when this thing happened and what happened. What happened? She noticed that everything was the same as usual. No one was doing anything for her birthday. So she got up to see whether there were any presents lying around. Nothing. This caused a violent eruption of emotion. So if I said to you, why is she crying? You'd be able to tell me that it's because no one remembered her birthday. There weren't any presents. At the beginning, there are a few signs of the virus. The sufferer may simply feel a little tired. This is about a cold. The first symptom is often sneezing, sometimes accompanied by a sore throat. The second stage is a runny nose. After that, the symptoms intensify with acute congestion. At the same time, the sufferer may experience a mild temperature and aches and pains. So we're looking at our connectives. At the beginning, the first symptom is, the second stage is, after that, at the same time. These are all connectives. Can you spot if there is any passive voice in this paragraph? Let's have a look. At the beginning, there are a few signs of the virus. No. The sufferer may simply feel a little tired. No. The first symptom is often sneezing, sometimes accompanied by a sore throat. No. The second stage is a runny nose. No. After that, the symptoms intensify with acute congestion. No. At the same time, the sufferer may experience a mild temperature and aches and pains. No. Could you change any of those to make them into passive voice? So you can see that I've changed the last one to make it passive voice. At the same time, mild temperature and aches and pains may be experienced by the sufferer. Makes it passive voice. That's quite a common thing that happens in explanation texts. Here are some causal connectives that you might use. Here are some connectives you might use, and you know lots of others as well. This is a quick recap of all the things that you should try and include in your writing. Remember, you need to be writing in paragraphs, so we're going to have a quick look at that in a second. Little practice for you, speaking exercise. See if you can explain what is happening, but you cannot use the words balloon, blowing up, or pop. Pause the video and have a go. Now we're going to look at what's effective about different paragraphs. What works? Standing up on a surfboard would be such an easy activity if the board were on a solid surface. But place that board on a surge of swirling water on which you must simultaneously leap from lying on your front to standing while trying to balance your weight just to keep from plunging into the watery abyss. And now you've got yourself a challenge. Learning how to stand is the step in learning to surf that separates the stoked from lame. As a starter, to begin with, you should forget about the water. The place to practice is on the beach. What really good things can you take from that? Some really good language. Here's the starting sentence that really tells us what this person is writing about. Standing up on a surfboard. So they've stated it at the beginning. We know what we're talking about, what this whole explanation piece is going to be about. And then there's some humour in here. Place that board on a surge of swirling water, which you must simultaneously leap from lying on your front to standing. This is using a bit of humour, but also we're using technical vocabulary. Balance your weight, plunging, swirling water. And now you've got yourself a challenge. So this is the introduction. This is about standing on a surfboard. Learning how to stand up is the step in learning to surf that separates the stoke from the lame. So here we've said we're going to talk about how to stand on the surfboard now. As a starter, there you go, there's one of those connectives. To begin with, you should forget about the water. You should, modal verb. The place to practice is on the beach. Here is my example of an opening paragraph about circuits. It tells you what the circuit is. So it's all about what something is. A circuit is a closed loop that electrons can travel in. A source of electricity, such as a battery, provides electrical energy in the circuit. This is using technical vocabulary: circuit, electrons, electricity, battery, energy, and is saying what something is and a little bit of how it works, but not too much. You're going to go into how it works in the next paragraph. How a circuit works. The battery pushes the electricity along the wires from the positive terminal through the bulb and back to the negative terminal. This creates a circuit. To turn out the light, the circuit needs to be broken by adding a switch. It does not matter where the switch goes, as the effect is the same. The bulb glows because electricity flows through the filament. When the bulb gets old, the filament breaks, and this breaks the circuit. So here we've got an example. When the bulb gets old, the filament breaks, and this breaks the circuit. So there we've got that cause and effect we're talking about. This creates a circuit. Again, what happens? Why does it happen? To turn out the light, so it's connective and also kind of telling us a bit cause and effect, the circuit needs to be broken by adding a switch. There's passive voice. The circuit needs to be broken by adding a switch. You will need to think really carefully about what order you want to write your text in. Right, here are some things to practice. Again, explanation, things to practice writing or speaking about before the end of the week when you will write your own explanation text about electricity or about circuits.